You've heard a man speak for 10 seconds, and something in you already knows. Not that he's wrong, not that he's stupid, that he's weak. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You didn't figure that out from his actions. You figured it out from his phrases. The words a man reaches for under pressure reveal more than his resume, his body, or his confidence ever will. Because language isn't decoration. It's a fingerprint of the mind. The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago. They believed a man's character shows up in what he says automatically, especially when things don't go his way, before behavior, before results, before excuses, and that's where the danger is. Because if you're repeating certain phrases unconsciously, your life isn't being directed by you. It's being governed by habit, emotion, and circumstance. You might think you're explaining yourself. You might think you're being honest. But in reality, you're quietly giving away authority. Weak men speak reactively. Disciplined men speak deliberately. In this video, we'll break down 5 phrases that instantly expose a mentally undisciplined man. Phrases so common most men say them daily without ever questioning the cost. And the 5th one, it's the most dangerous of all because it sounds intelligent but silently destroys a man's power. Stay with me. Stoicism is often misunderstood because people confuse restraint with numbness. They imagine a Stoic as someone who feels nothing, reacts to nothing, and withdraws from life. Stoicism was never about killing emotion. It was about refusing to be ruled by it. A Stoic feels anger when crossed. He feels frustration when things go wrong. He feels disappointment when efforts fail. What separates him from a weak man is not the presence of emotion, but the pause that follows it. That pause is everything. At the center of Stoic philosophy is a framework taught by Epictetus that is almost brutally simple. Life is divided into what is within your control and what is not. Most men blur that line. They rage at traffic, resent other people's choices, and obsess over outcomes they cannot command. At the same time, they neglect the one domain that actually belongs to them, their judgment. Stoicism reverses that mistake. It releases the external world and tightens discipline internally. A Stoic trains himself to govern how he interprets events, how he speaks under pressure, and how he responds when challenged. This is where authority is born, not from force or loudness, but from self-command. When a man controls his response, he stops being dragged by circumstance and starts setting the tone. Weak men speak from reaction. Stoics speak from authority. Phrase number 1. It's not my fault. This phrase sounds reasonable, even honest. Most men say it without thinking. It's not my fault. The deadline changed. The boss was unfair, she pushed me too far. At first glance, it looks like an explanation. In reality, it's something else entirely. It's not my fault is not a statement of truth. It's a transfer of power. The moment a man says it, he quietly moves authority away from himself and places it outside. Into people, into systems, into circumstances he cannot command. He may feel justified, but he has also made himself dependent. Stoic philosophy had a precise word for this state: slavery. Epictetus taught that a man becomes a slave the moment his inner state depends on external events, not when he is physically restrained, but when his peace rises and falls with things he does not control. A man can be free in chains or enslaved in comfort. The difference is where he locates control. The foolish man obsesses over what happened to him. The Stoic studies what remains in his command. Look at how this plays out in daily life. At work, a project fails. The weak response sounds logical. It wasn't my fault, the instructions were unclear. That may even be factually correct, but the Stoic asks a different question. What is my move now? He understands that fault explains the past, while responsibility shapes the future. In relationships, the same pattern appears. She made me react that way. This phrase pretends to describe emotion, but it actually confesses helplessness. It implies that another person holds the remote control to your behavior. Once that belief takes root, discipline collapses. Here is the distinction most men never learn. Responsibility is not the same as blame. Blame looks backward. It hunts for guilt. It weakens you by locking your attention on what cannot be changed. Responsibility looks forward. It asks what can be done with what remains. It strengthens you by returning agency to where it belongs. You can acknowledge that something wasn't your fault and still claim responsibility for the response. You can refuse guilt without refusing ownership. That shift is where power returns. Stoics understood this clearly. They did not deny injustice. They did not pretend circumstances were fair. They simply refused to let unfairness dictate their character. When events moved beyond their control, they tightened control where it still mattered: judgment, speech, and action. A man who repeats, "It's not my fault," is often trying to protect himself. But protection is not the same as strength. Strength comes from leverage, and leverage only exists where you accept responsibility. The moment you stop explaining and start deciding, your posture changes. You no longer wait for the world to cooperate. You adapt, you act, you lead yourself first. And if you believe anger somehow justifies this phrase, wait until the next one. Phrase number 2, so he made me angry. This phrase sounds harmless, even justified. He made me angry. She knows exactly how to push my buttons. They ruined my mood. But from a Stoic perspective, this sentence reveals a dangerous misunderstanding of the mind. No one makes you angry. What you're really saying is this: I handed someone permission to control my inner state. Seneca had a blunt description for anger. He called it temporary madness, not because emotion is evil, but because anger suspends judgment. It narrows perception. It convinces a man that reaction is the same as strength. Modern biology quietly agrees with him. When something triggers you, your body releases stress chemicals designed for short bursts of action. Those chemicals naturally clear from your system in about a minute or two. If the anger lingers, it's no longer chemistry, it's cognition. You're keeping it alive by replaying the event, rehearsing what you should have said, or building a story about disrespect. This is where emotional illiteracy shows itself. The reactive man believes his emotions are caused by people. When someone criticizes him, ignores him, or disrespects him, he reacts automatically. His behavior follows the stimulus without delay. In Stoic terms, he is not acting, he is being acted upon. He becomes a puppet. The Stoic sees the same event and recognizes a different sequence. Something happens. Sensation arises, then comes a moment of interpretation. That moment is the gate. The Stoic stands there as a gatekeeper. He decides what enters and what does not. This is not suppression. It's literacy. When a man says, "He made me angry," he is admitting he does not understand that gap. He believes emotion moves straight from the outside world into his mouth. That belief makes him predictable. Predictable men are easy to provoke, easy to manipulate, easy to control. Stoicism trains a different habit. It teaches that events are neutral until judged. Insults only wound if accepted. Provocation only works if invited. The Stoic does not deny feeling the surge. He simply refuses to surrender to it. A co-worker speaks sharply in a meeting. The reactive response is immediate irritation, followed by defensiveness. The Stoic notices the surge, then asks a quieter question. Why, what meaning am I assigning to this? Is it disrespect? Or pressure? Is it personal? Or situational? That pause changes everything. The man who cannot pause must react. The man who can pause gets to choose. Think about the last person you said they made me angry about. Be honest. What they revealed wasn't your weakness, it was your trigger, a value touched, a wound still sensitive, a boundary unclear. That's not a flaw, it's information. Stoics don't deny emotion, they study it. And the moment a man stops blaming others for what he feels, he regains authorship over what he does next. And if you think anger excuses what comes out of your mouth, the next phrase will challenge that belief entirely. Phrase number 3. I'll be happy when... This phrase sounds harmless, responsible even. I'll be happy when I make more money, when I get in shape, when things finally calm down, when I see results. On the surface, it looks like motivation. From a Stoic perspective, it's a delay tactic. I'll be happy when quietly pushes life into the future and treats the present moment as something to endure rather than inhabit. It turns today into a waiting room for a tomorrow that may never arrive. This is postponed living. The mind behind this phrase is always reaching forward, always narrating a future version of life where peace finally becomes allowed. But that future keeps moving. Like a horizon, it stays just far enough away to chase but never touch. Imagine a man on a treadmill, eyes locked on a screen showing a destination ahead. He's running hard, sweating, exhausted, convinced he's getting closer. But the belt never stops moving. He isn't advancing, he's just burning energy in place. That's what I'll be happy when does to a man. Stoicism dismantles this illusion with brutal clarity. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire under constant pressure, betrayal, and war. If anyone had a reason to postpone contentment, it was him. Yet he reminded himself repeatedly to confine attention to the present duty. Not because he lacked ambition, but because he understood something most men miss. The future is not real. The past is finished. Only the present can be lived. Here is where the confusion happens. Stoicism does not oppose ambition. It opposes attachment. Ambition is action without desperation. It is disciplined effort rooted in values. Attachment is emotional dependency on outcomes. It says, I cannot be at peace unless reality arranges itself a certain way. That mindset is fragile. A man attached to outcomes becomes anxious, impatient, and perpetually dissatisfied. Even when he achieves what he chased, the satisfaction is brief. The mind immediately invents the next condition. The finish line moves, the pressure returns. Stoics work toward goals without tying their worth or peace to results. They act because action is right, not because success promises emotional relief. This difference changes the texture of life. When a man stops postponing happiness, he doesn't become passive. He becomes grounded. He still builds, still improves, still pursues excellence. But he is no longer negotiating with the future for permission to feel whole. Look closely at this phrase and you'll see its hidden cost. I'll be happy when trains the mind to reject the present. And a man who rejects the present spends his entire life somewhere else. Stoicism brings him back, not to comfort, to clarity. The next phrase sounds productive, even virtuous, but underneath, it's fear wearing the mask of responsibility. Phrase number 4. Why is this happening to me? This phrase doesn't sound weak, it sounds human. Why is this happening to me? Why now? What did I do to deserve this? But from a Stoic perspective, this question reveals a man who is still arguing with reality. The moment something painful happens, the mind looks for meaning. That's natural. The mistake is assuming hardship is a punishment. That assumption turns difficulty into resentment and pain into suffering. Stoicism offers a radically different frame. The obstacle is not a verdict, it is not personal, it is not proof that something has gone wrong, it is training. The Stoics called this attitude amor fati, the love of fate. Not passive acceptance and certainly not optimism, but a disciplined willingness to treat everything that happens as necessary material for growth. Marcus Aurelius faced war, betrayal, illness, and the constant pressure of leadership. He did not ask why life was cruel to him. He asked how events could be used to refine his character. That shift made him unshakable. Think of a wrestler preparing for competition. If the coach pairs him with an opponent who is weak and predictable, nothing changes. Comfort produces stagnation. But when he is thrown against someone stronger, faster, more experienced, the match becomes brutal. He struggles, he fails, he learns. His strength increases precisely because the challenge was unfair. Life works the same way. When a man asks, "Why is this happening to me?" he is still hoping for an easier opponent. He is resisting the match. That resistance drains energy and sharpens bitterness. The Stoic stops resisting and starts studying. Or consider a storm at sea. One captain screams at the wind, cursing the waves, demanding fairness from the sky. Another says nothing. He adjusts the sails. Both face the same storm. Only one remains in command. Fire offers an even clearer lesson. When wind strikes a weak flame, it flickers and dies. When wind hits a strong fire, it burns hotter. The difference is not the wind, it is what the fire has been built to do. Stoicism teaches men to become fire. The shift happens when the question changes. Instead of asking, "Why me?" the Stoic asks, "What is this training? What is this difficulty sharpening? What weakness is being exposed? What discipline is being demanded?" This reframing does not eliminate pain. It eliminates useless suffering. Pain becomes information. Hardship becomes instruction. Fate becomes an ally instead of an enemy. This is the dividing line. Boys ask questions hoping for relief. Men extract lessons and move forward. Once a man stops arguing with reality, reality stops feeling like an attack. It becomes a forge. And every obstacle, properly used, hardens him into someone far more difficult to break. Phrase number 5. I know that already. This phrase doesn't sound emotional, it sounds intelligent. I know that already. Nothing new here. I've heard this before. But in Stoic philosophy, this sentence marks a quiet ending, not of knowledge, of growth. Epictetus was direct about this. He warned that a man who believes he already knows cannot be taught, not because wisdom is rare, but because arrogance seals the mind shut. When the ego decides its image must be protected, learning becomes a threat. This is where the difference between ego and Stoicism becomes clear. The ego protects appearance. The Stoic protects understanding. When a man says, "I know that already," he is often not evaluating truth. He is defending identity. He is signaling that he does not want to feel uninformed, corrected, or momentarily smaller than he imagines himself to be. The phrase is not about insight, it is about control. There is a short Zen story that mirrors this Stoic insight perfectly. A scholar visits a master to learn. The master pours tea into the scholar's cup. The cup fills, then overflows. Tea spills onto the table. The scholar interrupts, irritated, pointing out that the cup is already full. The master responds calmly, "Just like this cup, your mind is full. How can I add anything unless you empty it first?" Stoicism teaches the same principle without poetry. A rigid mind cannot receive pressure without breaking. A flexible mind absorbs force and adapts. This is not about intelligence, it is about posture. The rigid man listens only to confirm what he already believes. He measures new information by whether it flatters his self-image. If it challenges him, he dismisses it. Over time, life notices this resistance and increases the pressure. The Stoic does something different. He maintains an observer's stance toward his own mind. When irritation arises at being corrected, he notices it instead of obeying it. When pride tightens, he studies it. That distance allows learning to continue long after others have stopped. This is why the Stoics valued humility so highly. Not the performative kind, but the functional kind. The humility that says, "There is more here than I see." The humility that keeps the cup empty enough to receive. A man who stops learning does not remain neutral. He begins to decay. His strategies become outdated, his judgments dull, his reactions grow predictable. Eventually, reality corrects him in harsher ways. That is the quiet warning Stoicism offers. The moment a man stops learning, life begins disciplining him. Not out of cruelty, but necessity. Growth will happen voluntarily through attention or involuntarily through pain. Stoics choose the first path. They protect their capacity to learn above their need to look competent. Because the strongest position a man can hold is not "I know," it is "I am still paying attention." 5 phrases, 5 habits of speech most men repeat without noticing. Together, they form a prison. Each phrase is a bar, and not because the words are evil, but because of what they reveal. Blame replaces responsibility, reaction replaces judgment, the future replaces the present, resistance replaces learning, ego replaces growth. That's how a man locks himself in. The Stoics never said the prison was external, they said it was internal, built slowly through unconscious language and unexamined habits of mind. The tragedy isn't that the bars exist, it's that most men don't realize they're standing behind them. Here's the quiet truth: the door is not locked. Awareness is the key. The moment you hear yourself about to say one of these phrases and stop, even once, something shifts. You are no longer governed by habit, you are choosing. And choice is where discipline begins. This video wasn't meant to impress you with ideas. It was meant to offer a mirror. What you do with it is your responsibility. If this resonated, not as entertainment, but as recognition, hit like. Not for the algorithm, as a signal to yourself that you noticed something worth keeping. And if you want to walk this path with men who value restraint, clarity, and inner authority, subscribe and stay. Because weak men defend their phrases, strong men delete them.